Good afternoon. Thanks for the kind introduction. And as I hear already an introduction yesterday, I'm sorry I wasn't here then to hear it. I'm going to explain you just the generic details of this City of Things plan, and the plan for a big testbed and living lab on the Internet of Things for the city that we want to develop, that we are developing here in Antwerp, and how this links to a number of challenges, a number of choices that need to be made around smart cities in general and smart mobility specifically. When we started to think about the City of Things, we used this well-known definition of smart cities as a place where you combine information technology with the physical world around you, but always with a specific goal in mind, always goal-driven and problem-driven, and that's linked to a number of social, economic and environmental problems. And we know, as when we look at when we prioritize those problems that are plaguing our city, then we know what we are talking about. We are the proud champions here in Belgium of most hours wasted in traffic jams in the whole of Europe. So we know what congestion is about. We know we need to do something about it. And there are a lot of initiatives around smart mobility that are currently being taken. The thing is, of course, that there are still also a huge range of questions unanswered, and there are a lot of different models that you can apply to put smart city solutions or to use smart city solutions in order to tackle these mobility issues. You can have a very centralized approach, such as you have in cities like Barcelona, for instance, currently, where there are these pilot projects where there is a huge range of information that is being gathered from the streets, from street furniture, from the public transport that is driving around. And basically all of that is that goes to an intelligent operations center from where mobility is being controlled, and with the aim of making traffic as fluent as possible in the streets of the city. But you have also, I would say, radically opposite models, like the mobility as a service model that people are currently trying to set up in Helsinki and in the rest of Finland, where you are going to gather also equally a huge range of real-time data about mobility flows in the city and in the city region, but it's radically decentralized or distributed model, I would say. You're going to use that data basically to help individuals make choices about their personal mobility in the most optimal way. And the data is there from a huge range of traffic modes. You're also going to give them insight in how much this will cost them. You're even going to make it so easy for them that they don't need to buy individual tickets for individual trips anymore, but you get that in a subscription with as the end goal not to make car traffic mobility as fluent as possible in the city streets, but rather to give people the level of comfort that they don't need to take their car into the city anymore, and that they don't need to own that car anymore. So yes, everybody is convinced that we need to use smart city solutions to solve mobility issues, but the kind of model and the best way to let's say put those different technologies together into a solution that makes sense, there is still a lot of discussion around that. Second, aspect that drove us to start City of Things is a number of dilemmas that we encounter in a lot of smart city projects, and when we talk with a lot of cities about their strategies and about their priorities, and we summarize them in these 4 dilemmas. First, what we call the infrastructure dilemma. It's clear that we need both public and private investment in platform technologies in order to make these smart city and smart mobility projects feasible. But how do you, as a city, do that? How do you cooperate that? How do you make those decisions together with the private enterprise without a vendor lock-in, not just for a couple of years, but possibly for a very lengthy period? That is a dilemma that a lot of cities are facing, and that is stopping them from going all into smart city projects, I would say. Second one is what I call an information dilemma. A lot of these urban issues, a lot of these mobility problems and other problems are in first order information problems, and a lot of the smart city services and solutions are aimed at providing much more data, real-time data about issues and about solutions. But we are faced with a situation where information is still very much trapped in silos within cities, between city departments, but also between cities and other stakeholders. Another dilemma that is keeping smart city projects back is what I call the innovation dilemma. Let's suppose that you take the decision, yes, we want to invest, yes, we want to go in a certain direction, yes, we want to roll out a certain solution. How do you make sure that even before you have done the first rollout, you are not already running behind on the continuous innovation that is in the meanwhile taking place? And finally, the integration dilemma. You need, by definition, a lot of stakeholders to make these smart city projects happen. But we know that a lot of these projects are being blocked, are being stopped because maybe the technology is ready, but the market isn't there. Maybe businesses are ready, but citizens aren't there. Maybe there are solutions available, but policy isn't synchronized. So there are all these integration problems, I would say. And basically, how we want to approach this, or what we see as a way forward, is this approach, and this is exactly what is behind the City of Things project in Antwerp. We want to have basically a city-wide testbed and living lab where we have a number of open enablers, parts of the infrastructure and of the platforms that we think need to be provided. If you provide them as open enablers, you are able to solve this infrastructure dilemma. You need an open data strategy that is more than just publishing a few yearly reports on a website to tackle this information dilemma. You need to work with a local ecosystem of partners to make sure that you have this kind of continuous innovation, and that you can implement those innovations in your overall solution and your overall systems. And on top of all, you need to implement what we call a permanent living lab, a kind of a permanent basis for pilots, for testing, for innovation projects, that the city also, where the city also plays an active role. Cities are not really used to playing a role in innovation, in big innovation programs. Wasting money on experiments that can fail, that can go wrong, this is usually a very tricky thing to do as a city. But we think that you need to provide this kind of environment where you can test out, where you can new things, where you can involve those different stakeholders, and where you can tackle this integration dilemma that is keeping businesses, citizens, and so on back from taking part. Just a few elements that play there. If you talk about open enablers, what are we talking about? Or I was in a strategy meeting, a closed strategy meeting of a large technology company number of months ago, where they started, where the president for Europe of Smart City Developments started his presentation, an internal presentation to that company with, "The battle of the streets has begun and our company will win it." There is a clear strategy going on right now to create lock-in around parts of what we call street furniture, part of the logistics infrastructure, the underlying networks. What we think is necessary is that that cities adopt a kind of a platform approach where some of that underlying infrastructure is basically being opened up to a whole range of suppliers of services, so that you can get a lot of innovation on top of those platforms, and you don't become locked into a number of silos. When we talk about that data problem, what is the challenge that we are facing there? Well, the challenge there is mainly that, yes, there are open data programs, but they are usually not dealing with real-time data. If you go to, there is a website that shows the real-time mobility data, for instance, for the city of New York, and then you see all these little balls, you see them moving around, and that is in real time the buses and the metro traffic and train traffic in that city. If you go to the same map for the Netherlands, it's already a much more boring picture, but at least you see every train, you see them moving in real time. If you go to Belgium, you see this one little ball, and that's the high-speed international train. You see it moving up and down the country, and basically that's it. So how are we expecting real smart city applications to be developed if we cannot provide this kind of data?
Sorry, what website is this?
I can give you the details. I don't have it on top of mind, but one initiative that we started, basically to encourage different cities to open up real-time data in an open manner, is the Open and Agile Smart Cities network, and that is a first step. There are now just over 100 cities worldwide signed up that have committed to open up at least one real-time data set per year, basically using a number of principles, so that this data is harmonized, is standardized, and can be accessed by application programming interfaces, by APIs worldwide. If we are talking about local ecosystems and involving local ecosystems, the first thing that springs to mind for a lot of people is involving your local startups, and that's definitely an important aspect of it. It's also the reason why the City of Things initiative here in Antwerp, it operates from the startup village, from an environment where local startups are gathered. But you need to think much wider than that. Your local retailers, your local citizens are also actors in this field. You cannot set up a smart city service involving new parking solutions where free parking is linked to shopping in the city center, and maybe linked to then afterwards going to the theater or to the movies together, without involving these kind of stakeholders. There are a lot of sharing economy initiatives where you need to involve people in a whole neighborhood. in order to get a number of services from the ground. So also that you need to involve in your approach. And finally, the fourth layer that I was talking about is this living lab approach, which is basically a form of running real-life pilots, but together with users right from the start, and involving those users also in the design or in the redesign of your solution itself. We started in 2013 with the European project on smart parking, amongst others in the city of Brussels, but also Barcelona and Paris were involved. And it started around basically just opening up data about real-time data about the availability of parking spaces. But by involving also the actual users and also companies that are going to be a stakeholder in such systems, we quickly realized, and the whole system quickly evolved into an application that is gathering all the real-time information on mobility in the city of Brussels, or in part of the city of Brussels, I should say, where I can not just do the planning of my entire trajectory and plan then also that parking space, but I know at the same moment which metro, tram, bus is going to pass by, whether there are taxis available nearby, whether there are rental bikes near that parking spot, and so on and so forth. We were able to integrate all that by involving all those stakeholders into the project, and by the real demands of users saying, okay, it's not helpful for me to just have a solution that is simply tackling a parking, finding a parking spot need. You need a much more encompassing solution. And then we also realized that we needed to make it so that people could pay from that same application, and we harmonized all the payment systems and even the physical systems. You can now open the barrier to the parking garages, and your payment session starts immediately. You sort of reserve a space in that parking lot just from that same system. And if you take this was something that basically developed really in a piecemeal, in an incremental fashion in this Living Lab project. But if you look what we have done after 2 years of that of this innovation project, basically it is this mobility as a service application that I was talking about before, and that people are now discussing in different countries on how to do that, which elements should be there. Actually, our users in the Living Lab trial basically designed that together with us. But you can do more in your Living Labs than simply design applications and systems. You can also test impacts of those innovations and of those systems. I don't know if you see the difference between these two pictures. Well, in fact, the difference is 30 minutes less traffic jam per person, per car driver. And this is a result from a pilot test that was done, which showed that if the arrows point downwards in traffic signs like this, it creates a psychological impression for the driver that he slows down just a tiny bit. And if the arrows point upwards, they accelerate just a tiny bit coming towards it. And this is something. This is not it's not a huge difference, but in terms of fluidity, it makes a difference of, on average, 30 minutes less traffic jams per person in certain heavily congested areas. Now, this is something that I don't think that any city or any government will give you money to start redoing all the signs on the roads. If you have thought just because you have thought that this could be a great idea. This is something that you can only discover and then only convince people that it's worthwhile investing in by running a pilot, by doing a test. And that's the other function, I think, of living labs, that is to show a certain impact so that you can get this synchronization between technology readiness, market readiness, policy readiness, citizen readiness, and so on. Now, just to conclude, I think, yeah.
Time is more or less up.
My time is more or less up. Just to now tell you very briefly about this City of Things initiative that we have and how this links to those 4 elements that, as far as we are concerned, are crucial to make a smart city strategy to make it work. So what we want to do here is to create a reference laboratory, but a real life laboratory around you in the city, around Internet of Things in the city. And so this goes for hardware technologies, network technologies, data, but also users and business with different partners. So let me skip this part. What is important in terms of these enablers, the bottom element that I was talking about, is that what we are trying to create here in Antwerp is an Internet of Things network and a network infrastructure that is technology agnostic, meaning it is not specific to one of the various Internet of Things standards and technology families that there are today, and we are trying to first of all see whether we can work on the interoperability between those technologies, but also open up the access to those different technologies so that we can avoid the vendor lock-in that you already see happening in a number of other smart city initiatives. And we are rolling out our multi technology gateways. We are rolling them out, or at least Pieter's group here is rolling them out here in Antwerp now. In terms of data and let's say liberating data, making sure that there is this kind of data ecosystem that a lot of services and can use. What we are trying to implement in City of Things is not just working with this standardized real-time open data, but using and offering a data analysis stack and architecture that is in itself also open, that is in itself also open source, that is in itself also freely available, so that people don't just have the opportunity to use lots of open data sets, but basically you can do it also in your own way. And that data is, most of that data is about the behavior of people and the behavioral change of people in the city. Because a lot of these smart city problems, we are only going to be able to solve them if there is real behavioral change amongst people. Now, if you want to document that, you need to look at the activities of people, also longitudinal, and you need to monitor and incentivize people to change their behavior. On the local ecosystem, there is a whole ecosystem model where we can involve not just small companies but also larger companies into City of Things. And finally, I won't go into all the details there, but you can contact us also afterwards. And finally, City of Things as a permanent living lab. This is, I would say, the final part of the whole picture. There will be a whole set of activities tailored to the citizens here in Antwerp, where through a number of applications and through a number of means they become part of the City of Things Living Lab, and basically they allow us to monitor parts of their behavior and to also give them incentives to change that behavior if we think that is necessary. So I realize that this is maybe way too brief and way too generic, but I hope it gives you a feeling of what we think is a kind of a necessary set of elements to enable smart mobility and smart city innovation, and the way that here in the City of Things, with the gateways, with the open data framework, with the local ecosystem, and with this living lab, we are trying to tackle that. So, thanks very much.